Dark Horizon, A Race Against Time. Chapter 1. The mission. The air in the spaceship was dense with anticipation. Captain Ava Green and her team sat around the control panel, each of them gritting their teeth in anxious determination. In a few moments, they would descend into the dark unknown of the planet known only as T-34G. Their mission: to extract a rare mineral capable of powering the entire galaxy. But something in the atmosphere of T-34G made the extraction process extremely dangerous. "Okay, everyone. You know the drill," Ava announced, her voice steady and commanding. "Suit up and let's move out." Her team quickly roused from their seats and headed to the back of the ship to prepare for the landing. The captain reached for her helmet and made her way to the cargo hold, checking her equipment as she went. Everything was in order, but she still felt a pit in her stomach. This mission was critical to the survival of their civilization, but at what cost? As they landed on the planet, Ava felt the ship shudder from the impact. She steadied herself and stared out of the window at the barren landscape. The planet was devoid of life and coated in a thick layer of dust. But the mineral they were after lay beneath that dust. "All right, team, let's go." Ava led the way as they stepped out into the hostile environment, each member of the team scanning the surroundings for any potential threats. They had been warned that the mineral on this planet had an effect on the local wildlife, making them particularly aggressive. But as they walked, Ava's senses tingled with unease. There was something else, something intangible and ominous hidden in the dust clouds surrounding them. Suddenly, a piercing scream disrupted the heavy silence. The team froze for a moment, unsure of where to look. "Move out, quickly!" Ava bellowed, her mind racing with possible scenarios. They ran towards the scream, spreading out and searching for its source. Then, out of the dust emerged a towering beast, its eyes glowing with a fierce red light. The sight of the creature made Ava's heart pound in her chest. "Take it down," she yelled, her voice drowned out by the sound of weapons firing. They fought with all their might, trying to take down the beast, but it was too strong. With each passing moment, the team's energy and ammo began to wane. Just then, a sudden explosion rocked the planet, followed by a deafening silence. As the dust cleared, Ava and her team saw something that caused their jaws to drop in awe. A massive ship, with technology far beyond anything they had ever seen before, hovered above them. The ship had come out of nowhere, completely silent. "Who are you?" Ava asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. "We are the Watchers," a disembodied voice replied. "We have been watching you, and we have a proposition for you." Chapter 2. Threats. Ava stood there, staring up at the massive ship in disbelief. The Watchers? She had never heard of them before. But with the way they had just appeared out of nowhere, Ava knew that they were not to be trifled with. "What proposition?" Ava asked, keeping her hand on her weapon. "We have been searching the galaxy for a team that can help us," the voice replied. "We require your expertise in a matter of utmost importance." "What matter?" Ava asked. "We cannot discuss it here," the voice replied. "Please come aboard our ship and we will explain everything." Ava hesitated, unsure of what to do. But she knew that this could be an opportunity to gain insight into the unknown. She signaled to her team, and they all slowly started to make their way towards the massive ship. As they boarded the ship, Ava couldn't help but notice how pristine and advanced everything was. The interior of the ship was unlike anything she had ever seen before. The floors were made of a sleek metallic substance, and the walls were adorned with intricate designs that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. "Welcome aboard the ship," the disembodied voice said. "Please come this way." The team followed the voice down a long, winding hallway until they reached a large room. The room was empty except for a single object in the center, a glowing orb that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "What is that?" Ava asked, her hand slowly inching towards her weapon. That is the source of our power, the voice replied. But it is in danger. In danger? Ava asked. From what? Another civilization has discovered the orb and they are trying to steal it, the voice replied. We need your help to stop them. Ava looked at her team, exchanging a knowing glance. They were trained for this sort of situation. But as they turned to leave, the voice stopped them once more. But beware, the voice warned. This civilization is not like any enemy you have faced before. They have technology far beyond anything you have seen. And they will stop at nothing to get the orb. The team left the ship, shaken by what they had just heard. Another civilization, with advanced technology and formidable weapons. This was not going to be an easy mission. As they neared their own ship, a warning signal blared to life, indicating that the atmosphere was becoming volatile. Ava's heart raced as she realized they had only minutes to get off the planet before it became too dangerous. With a newfound sense of urgency, Ava and her team rushed back to their ship and took off into the unknown. Chapter 3. Betrayal. Ava couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled in her stomach since their encounter with the Watchers. Who were they really, and what was their end goal? And now they had been tasked with a mission that was not their own. It felt like they had been caught up in something bigger than themselves. As they flew towards their destination, Ava couldn't help but notice that one of her team members, Jackson, had been behaving strangely. He was usually a cool-headed and focused member of the team, but he had been acting jumpy and paranoid since their encounter with the Watchers. Jackson, is everything okay? Ava asked, concern coloring her voice. Jackson shifted in his seat, avoiding her gaze. Yeah, I'm fine, he replied. But Ava knew something was off. As they reached the planet where they would confront the other civilization, Ava devised a plan of action. They would stay hidden and observe, gathering as much information as possible before making a move. They landed the ship behind a range of mountains and crept up to a vantage point overlooking the civilization. Ava used her binoculars to survey the scene. The civilization was indeed more advanced than anything she had seen before. The buildings were made of a strange metallic substance, and they seemed to be powered by some sort of energy source. Suddenly, Jackson let out a gasp. Ava turned to him, expecting to see him staring through the binoculars. But instead, he was staring at something in his hand. What is that? She asked, reaching for the object in his hand. But Jackson pulled away, holding the object out of her reach. It's nothing, he replied, his voice shaking. Ava narrowed her eyes, sensing that something was wrong. But before she could investigate further, they heard the sound of approaching footsteps. A group of soldiers, dressed in the same metallic armor as the civilians, were making their way towards them, weapons drawn. Ava signaled for her team to retreat back to the ship, but as they ran, an explosion rocked the ground beneath their feet. Ava turned, expecting to see the advancing soldiers. But instead, she saw Jackson, holding a device in his hand that was smoking with the aftermath of the explosion. Jackson, what are you doing? She yelled, her voice drowned out by the sound of another explosion. I'm sorry, Ava, he replied, his voice filled with a strange, almost manic desperation. They paid me. They promised me wealth, power. Everything I've ever wanted. Ava felt betrayal course through her veins like a bitter poison. She had trusted Jackson with her life, and he had sold them out. She struggled to come to terms with this revelation as they boarded their ship, trying to fight off the advancing enemy. As they took off, Ava couldn't help but feel that everything had just become much more difficult. They were facing a formidable enemy and now they had to do it with one less team member. Chapter 4. The new allies. Ava and her team were on the run, trying to outrun the enemy civilization that was now hot on their trail. The betrayal of Jackson still stung, making the already tense situation even more difficult. But Ava was a skilled strategist, and she knew that they could still come out on top if they thought on their feet. As they hurtled through space, Ava received a signal on her communications device. It was a message from a group of rebels seeking to overthrow the enemy civilization. "We've intercepted your transmissions," the voice said. "You're in trouble. We can help." Ava regarded the transmission with caution. They couldn't afford to align themselves with just anyone, not with something as crucial as this mission on the line. "What's your guarantee that you can help us?" Ava asked, her voice cold. "We have the technology and the manpower you need to defeat the enemy," the voice replied. "And we want to help you stop them just as much as you do." Ava mulled it over for a moment, weighing the risks and rewards of working with the rebels. But ultimately, she knew they needed all the help they could get. "Okay," Ava said, her resolve firm. "Meet us at the specified coordinates." As they arrived at the coordinates, Ava's team was greeted by a group of rebels, dressed in the same metallic armor as the enemy civilization's soldiers. But there was something different about these rebels. They seemed more agile and efficient than the enemy's soldiers. Ava noticed that their armor seemed to be made of the same substance as the enemy's buildings. "We're glad you could make it," the rebel leader said, extending a hand. Ava shook his hand, sizing him up. She had been burned before by Jackson's betrayal, but something about the rebels made her believe that they could be trusted. "All right, what's the plan?" Ava asked. The rebel leader outlined their strategy. They would lead an assault on the enemy civilization's main stronghold, infiltrating and taking out strategic targets before finally making their way towards the orb. Ava was impressed with their meticulous plan. She knew that this could be their chance to turn the tide of the mission in their favor. As they advanced towards the enemy civilization's stronghold, they encountered fierce resistance. But the rebels fought with such ferocity that it made Ava's heart race with a mix of fear and adrenaline. Finally, they arrived at the enemy stronghold. The rebels infiltrated the complex, successfully taking out strategic targets and weakening the enemy's grip on the orb. As they made their way towards the orb, Ava couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. This was the moment of truth, the moment that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Just as they reached the orb, they were faced with a formidable opponent, the enemy's leader, who was determined to protect the orb at all costs. But Ava and her team, aided by the rebels, fought with everything they had. And in the end, they emerged victorious, securing the orb and protecting the galaxy's future. As the rebels bid them farewell, Ava realized that they had made new allies in the fight against the unknown. And with this victory behind them, Ava and her team were ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 5. The race against time. With the orb secured, Ava and her team thought their mission was over. But the Watchers had other plans. "We need you to bring the orb to our headquarters," the disembodied voice said over the comms. "Why?" Ava asked, her hand tightening around her weapon. "It is imperative to our mission," the voice replied. Ava hesitated. She knew that the Watchers had helped them before, but she still did not trust them completely. But as they made their way towards the Watchers' headquarters, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There was a sense of urgency that permeated the air, a feeling that they were racing against time. As they entered the Watchers' headquarters, something felt different. The air was thick with tension, and everyone seemed to be on edge. "We need to install the orb in its proper place," the voice said urgently. Ava looked around, her hand reflexively going to her weapon. But she couldn't see anything or anyone that posed an immediate threat. "Fine," she said shortly. "Show us where." The Watchers led them to a room that was unlike anything Ava had seen before. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, and there was a large pedestal in the center of the room. "Place the orb here," the voice commanded. Ava approached the pedestal cautiously, still wary of the Watchers' intentions. But as she placed the orb on the pedestal, something strange happened. The symbols on the walls started to glow, and the room was filled with an otherworldly light. "What is happening?" Ava demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. "The orb is activating the portal," the voice replied. "You must leave this place at once." But it was too late. The ground beneath their feet began to shake, and Ava knew that they were in grave danger. "Get back to the ship," she yelled to her team. But even as they ran towards the ship, the walls started to crumble around them. Ava saw her team being thrown to the ground, the force of the crumbling walls overpowering them. Ava herself was thrown across the room, hitting her head on the ground and blacking out. When she woke up, everything was dark. But she could hear sounds, the sounds of strange, foreign creatures moving around her. Panic set in as she realized that she was somewhere new, somewhere unknown. She had to get back to her team, had to find a way out. But as she tried to stand up, she realized that something was wrong. Her body was numb, unresponsive. She couldn't move. Ava was trapped in the darkness, unable to move or communicate. But there was a glimmer of hope. The Watchers had promised that they would protect the galaxy. And Ava knew that as long as they were alive, there was still a chance. But she also knew that time was running out, and that she had to find a way out of this darkness before it was too late. Chapter 6. The Final Battle. Ava found herself in a dark, damp cell. She had no idea how much time had passed since she had been separated from her team. The darkness had become her constant companion, and she had lost all sense of time. But one day, Ava heard footsteps approaching. The door to her cell opened, and a group of rebels led by the same leader that had aided them in their last battle entered. "We're here to get you out," the leader said. Ava could hardly believe it. She had given up hope of ever escaping this place. But with the rebels' help, she was finally able to escape her cell and reunite with her team. As they made their way out of the underground complex, they encountered fierce resistance. The Watchers had betrayed them, and they were now fighting to survive against both the enemy civilization and their former allies. But Ava and her team fought with all they had. They had come too far to give up now. Finally, they reached the surface, and they could see the enemy civilization stronghold in the distance. The battle had reached its final stages. Ava could feel her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. The final battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The battle raged on, with neither side backing down. Ava and her team worked together flawlessly, taking out key targets and weakening their enemy's position. But as they pushed further into the stronghold, Ava felt something shift. The enemy's soldiers were now fighting with a ferocity that was almost desperate. And then Ava saw it. The Watchers had entered the battle, their strange, ethereal forms fighting alongside the enemy. Ava felt a white-hot rage flare up inside of her. The Watchers had manipulated them, had betrayed them. But Ava was determined to complete their mission, no matter the cost. Ava and her team launched a final assault on the enemy, fighting with everything they had. The battle was brutal, but in the end, they emerged victorious. As the dust settled, Ava stood among the wreckage of the enemy civilization's stronghold. They had saved the galaxy, and with the orb in their possession, they could ensure that the galaxy's future remained bright. But as they made their way back to their ship, Ava felt a sense of sadness settle over her. They had lost so much in this mission. They had lost Jackson, and they had lost a sense of trust in the Watchers. But Ava knew that they had also gained new allies, allies that they could trust. And as they lifted off from the surface of the planet, Ava felt a sense of hope for the future of the galaxy. Chapter 7. The Homecoming. Ava and her team returned to Earth as heroes. The orb they had secured had saved the galaxy from a fate worse than death, and the people of Earth were grateful. But Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had lost so much on this mission, had seen so much destruction and betrayal. She couldn't help but wonder if the cost had been too high. As they returned to their home base, Ava was surprised to see that there were no celebrations waiting for them. There were no balloons or banners, no cheers or congratulations. Instead, they were met with somber faces and hushed whispers. "What's going on?" Ava asked, apprehension creeping up her spine. "It's the Watchers," her commanding officer said. "They've gone rogue." Ava felt the blood drain from her face. How could this be happening? They had risked everything to protect the galaxy, and now it seemed that their greatest threat wasn't the enemy civilization, but the Watchers themselves. But as she met with her fellow soldiers, Ava felt a sense of determination stir within her. They had come too far to give up now. Ava and her team launched a final assault on the Watchers' stronghold, fighting with everything they had. The battle was brutal, with both sides taking heavy casualties. But even as the Watchers' ranks thinned, they fought on with a ferocity that was almost inhuman. Finally, Ava found herself facing the leader of the Watchers. He was a strange, ethereal figure that seemed almost to glow in the dim light. "I can't let you do this," he said softly. Ava squared her shoulders, her hand tightening around her weapon. "You betrayed us," she said, her voice cold. "It was for the greater good," the Watcher replied. Ava felt a white-hot rage flare up inside of her. The Watchers had manipulated them, had used them to their own ends. But she was determined to complete their mission, no matter the cost. Ava and the Watcher fought with everything they had. The battle was brutal, with each blow landing like a physical blow. But in the end, Ava emerged victorious, her weapon piercing the Watcher's ethereal form. As the dust settled, Ava looked out over the wreckage of the Watcher's stronghold. They had saved the galaxy from a fate worse than death, but it had come at a great cost. But as she turned to leave, she saw something that made her feel a sense of hope. The sky was lit up with a brilliant aurora, a sign that the universe was still filled with wonder and possibility. And as Ava and her team left the Watcher's stronghold, Ava knew that there would always be new threats to face, new battles to fight. But she also knew that as long as she had her team by her side, they could face anything together.